So they say that like every little girl growing up wants to be a princess, right? Dreams of big castles and all the flowing dresses, the knight in shining armor. Disney does a great job of perpetuating this. I never wanted to be a princess. I loved all of the movies. Like I watched Little Mermaid almost every day, read books, played pretend all the time, had the fancy dress up clothes. But I never wanted to actually be a princess. Why? Because this is what all these movies taught me. Princesses seem to come with a lot of rules. Apparently, there are a lot of rules to follow when you're a princess. You have to marry a prince. You have to dress a certain way, walk a certain way, wave a certain way. You can't go a lot of places. Jasmine wasn't even allowed to leave the palace. A lot of rules. Think about just the movie Princess Diaries. If you've never seen it, the entire premise of the movie is this. Mia learns she's a princess and then has to learn about all the princess rules. That's the entire movie, her learning all the princess rules. Because there's apparently a lot of rules that come with being a princess. So no, I never wanted to be a princess. Because like, what's the point? What's the point of having fancy castles, elaborate gowns, having all the riches that come with being royalty, if you have to follow so many rules? Sometimes I think being a Christian can feel the same way. And in Jesus's time, well, and also now, the same is true for our Jewish brothers and sisters. See, in our gospel lesson today, as they have done before, and as we'll hear about them doing again later, the Pharisees are really obsessed with all the rules. And they come at Jesus frequently about following all the rules. And apparently the disciples are not following all the rules, so they're in trouble today. But when we look at this from a Christian perspective, everything's a little bit different for us because of Jesus. See, the rules that they're talking about, these come from the Torah. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, also known as the books of Moses. It's basically 5 books of rules, right? Most of them come from Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. All the rules that we talk about, the purity laws and other things, you know, when they're talking about when and how they're supposed to do things. All of these rules are when the Israelites get when they're wandering through the desert, and they need a little bit of guidance, right? So God gives them some rules to follow. And there's like a lot of them. Like a lot. Like if you want to like go into a weird deep dive in the Bible, just start reading the book of Leviticus and you'll run into some really, really weird rules. First, we know, as we heard in our lesson today, we have rules about when and how you're supposed to wash your hands. They even have rules about what meat they're allowed to eat and how to kill the animal properly to eat it. They have rules all the way down to what fabrics that you're allowed to wear in your clothing. Almost as many rules as it seems to be a princess. And you might be wondering, you know, well, wait a minute. All of these are in our scriptures too. How come we don't follow them? Why do we eat bacon? Why do we not check our tags to make sure we're wearing the proper blend of clothing? Why do we not follow all of these rules? You should still wash your hands before you eat. That's just sanitation, not so much a biblical law. But why don't we follow these? You ever wonder that as a Christian? Well, because of Jesus. In Matthew 5, in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he addresses just this. Because again, those Pharisees are asking him about all those rules again. And he says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law. I have not come to abolish it, but rather to fulfill the law." Following all the rules, all the laws has always been impossible. We're human. It's where that phrase comes from, that we are just human, because we are flawed, we make mistakes, and we always fall short of all of the things that God sets out. And so in Jesus, God created a new way to fulfill the law. The love and grace and forgiveness given through Jesus Christ's sacrifice on the cross. This was God's new way of taking care of things. Lutheran theology always pairs law and gospel together. And even in seminary, when they teach us how to preach, it's always law and gospel. It's always together, always. There's even a Lutheran preaching book called Law and Gospel. They make everyone buy it. Law and gospel. See, law convicts us. The law is the thing that points out that we are imperfect, that we cannot follow all the rules. And the gospel, that is the good news of Jesus Christ, is what sets us free. And so Jesus is announcing this, that he is the one that actually fulfills the law for all of us, to set us free. And we know this. We talk about this all the time. We talk about all the time this gift of grace from God. And the best way that I've heard it put is this in reference to the law. The lawmaker became the lawkeeper who died for the lawbreakers. Simple, yet powerful. That God became incarnate and Jesus came to earth to take care of everything for us. This is the gift of grace. So then the problem comes for we Christians when we start to cherry pick out some of those old laws and use them against people. And I do mean use. Oftentimes when we dive into some of these old laws, it's to manipulate people. It is to try to use them against people, to regulate people's lives. We don't follow all of them. Again, we still eat bacon. But most of the rules that we seem to cherry pick out are to manage people's lives in a way that some churches feel very necessary. Particularly our intimate lives. That seems to be one that people really like to pick out rules for. It's sad, really, as Christians, that we can still constantly see on the news or hear from lots of places of people getting bombarded and downtrodden with these cherry-picked rules. That oftentimes what we hear preached is you should not do this and you should not do that and you need to do this, rather than focusing on this grace and love and forgiveness given to us freely by the creator of the universe. That seems like something to talk about to me. That seems like something that we should come to church to hear about, and that we should be more focused on sharing that with others instead of, cherry picking rules out to try to regulate everyone's lives. That maybe as a church, we need to do better at focusing on this gift from God and what this gift gives all of us and the fruits of the Spirit in sharing these gifts with others. I think this is really what Jesus is trying to get across to the audience that he speaks to in the gospel lesson for today, and almost every other time that he talks to the Pharisees about the laws. And that's this, that God isn't counting how many times you wash your hands, whether or not you eat bacon, or even who you love. Rather, God cares about how we treat one another in relationship. Jesus in the Gospels summarizes the whole law, the whole Torah. He summarizes the whole thing in this one statement: love God and love others. Period. That's it. So when Jesus says that these are the things that defile us and gives us that nice lift, that these are the things that make us unclean, that's because these are the things that we do that hurt other people. These are the things that damage relationships with our neighbors. And that's the part that's important. To share this gift of God, this love with our neighbors. Jesus came to create and lead a new kingdom in God, to make us all royal princesses and princesses of this kingdom. This place where we are inheritors of the gift of God's grace. And in here, there is not a whole list of rules to be a princess. We are covered under one umbrella, the love and grace of God. And our only task, not even a rule, our only task as these princes and princesses is to do the thing that Jesus asks. Love God and love your neighbors. The thing that I love about all the Disney princess movies and why I always keep watching them is because in almost every single one of these movies, every single one of these tales, they disregard the rules and the regulations and all that that's put in front of them to be a princess in order to do the right thing, in order to create a better world for the little princesses that are going to come after them. And I think this is our job too, to love God and love each other. And as a result, to make the kingdom just a little bit better for the next generation of princesses and princes. Amen.